In a moment that felt both historical and profoundly personal, Pope Leo XIV delivered his catechesis in English for the very first time. For millions of Catholics and non-Catholics alike, this wasn't just a linguistic shift, it was a symbol of deeper change, accessibility, and inclusion within the Church. Welcome to this special breakdown of Pope Leo XIV's English Catechesis, a teaching moment that captivated the world and echoed through the halls of St. Peter's Basilica like never before. Today, we unpack not just what he said, but what he meant, and what this catechesis tells us about the future of the Church under his leadership. It was a crisp morning in Vatican City. As the faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square for the weekly general audience, few expected what would unfold. Traditionally, popes have delivered their teachings in Italian, Latin, or occasionally other major languages, but always with translators standing by. This time, Pope Leo XIV did something unprecedented. He began to speak in English. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't a token phrase. It was the entire catechesis. Word for word. Idea for idea. Heart to heart, in the most widely spoken language on earth. Visuals, footage of the Pope standing before the crowd, his calm presence commanding attention. Subtitles showing his opening English lines. Brothers and sisters in Christ. Today, I want to speak to you from my heart, in a language that many of you call home. These words, simple yet profound, sparked applause and even visible emotion from many in the crowd. Cameras zoomed in on pilgrims wiping away tears, not just because of what was said, but how it was said. Pope Leo XIV's message centered on mercy in the modern world, a theme that has been part of his pastoral mission since the beginning of his papacy. But this time, he brought it forward with a clarity that felt tailor-made for both the wounded and the seeking. He said, "Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is not a loophole. Mercy is the face of God turned toward those who struggle to turn to Him." In those lines, he outlined the core of Catholic compassion, a God who is not distant, but intimate, not condemning, but healing. And then, he asked a question that hung heavy in the square. When was the last time we let someone fail, without casting them away? Visuals, pilgrims reflecting, hands in prayer, visuals of community outreach and service. The Pope did not simply define mercy, he illustrated it, in parables, in real-life scenarios, in stories of youth struggling with addiction, families torn by conflict, and even victims of war. In a tone strikingly intimate for a papal address, Pope Leo XIV shared a personal story. As a young priest, I once visited a boy in a juvenile prison. He had no parents, no hope. But he asked me one question: does God still want me? The square fell silent as he paused. I looked into his eyes and said, more than you know. That young man today is a father and a catechist. The message was clear: no soul is too lost. No life is too far gone. The Pope's use of English was not only symbolic, it made this vulnerability universal. People from the Philippines to Ghana, from Ireland to India, could hear and understand every syllable in real time. There was no barrier. Why is this catechesis in English such a big deal? Because for centuries, the language of the Church, while sacred, has often felt inaccessible. Latin and Italian carried tradition, yes, but they also carried distance. Pope Leo XIV's English catechesis marked a deliberate shift, one toward transparency and directness. Expert commentary cut in voiceover. This was not just a translation, this was transformation. It shows Pope Leo is serious about reaching everyday people, especially the younger generation, in the digital world. Social media exploded. #PopeSpeaksEnglish trended on X, formerly Twitter. Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts captured clips of his speech with emotional subtitles and reaction videos. Some users called it the most human moment of any papacy in recent memory. But this wasn't just about language. This was about identity. In choosing to speak English, the most globalized language on earth, Pope Leo XIV sent a message to immigrants, to multicultural families, to converts, to second-generation Catholics, to seekers who have felt excluded by formality and translation gaps. You belong here too. He didn't abandon tradition, he bridged it. His cadence respected Catholic liturgy, yet the language allowed the catechesis to sound like a conversation with a mentor, a father, a guide. He urged young people not to see God as a rulebook but as a relationship. He challenged leaders not to hide behind theology but to embody it. And he reassured the broken. If your heart is cracked, then let God pour His light through the cracks. Let's pause and look at how the catechesis was structured. Opening greeting in English, establishing connection. Thematic declaration, mercy as the face of God. Storytelling segment, real-life application. Call to reflection, questions for the conscience. Spiritual invitation, turning hearts back to Christ. Closing blessing in English and Latin, honoring tradition and inclusion. This 6-part flow helped audiences stay engaged, even if they weren't regular churchgoers. The format was emotionally intelligent, spiritually nourishing, and linguistically accessible. Reactions poured in. In New York, priests used the catechesis as their Sunday sermon. In Nigeria, Catholic youth groups discussed it in WhatsApp forums. In the Philippines, it became the basis of a university theology lecture. And in London, a viral video showed a group of teenagers, none of whom identified as Catholic, discussing the Pope's line. Mercy is the face of God turned toward those who struggle to turn to Him. That line alone sparked discussions in classrooms, coffee shops, and digital spaces. Pope Leo XIV's English catechesis wasn't just a moment, it became a movement. Let no one leave this square today without knowing they are loved by God. And with that, the square erupted in applause. But more importantly, so did hearts around the world. Stay with us as we continue this full English breakdown of Pope Leo XIV's groundbreaking catechesis. In the next chapter, we'll explore the reactions from the clergy, the critics, and the digital generation. In our last episode, we witnessed Pope Leo XIV make history, not just by speaking English, but by delivering a message that pierced hearts across cultures and countries. This wasn't a mere translation. It was a transformation, a shift in how the Church speaks, listens, and connects. Now let's dive deeper. Today, we examine the global aftermath, the clergy's reaction, and what this catechesis really means for the Church's future. Within hours of the catechesis, bishops, cardinals, and theologians began offering commentary. The Vatican press office translated and released the official text, but it was Pope Leo's voice, in English, that had the most weight. Archbishop Michael Corrigan of New York said, "For a generation that has felt unheard, Pope Leo spoke not just in English, he spoke in empathy." From Latin America, Cardinal Luis Garcia of Mexico City said, "This English catechesis will not divide us by language, it will unify us through meaning." Even in predominantly non-English speaking countries, the feedback was resounding. Why? Because for many, English serves as a bridge language, especially among youth, immigrants, and intercontinental communities. Perhaps the most powerful response came not from the pulpit, but from the palm of your hand. Within hours, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram were flooded with duet reactions to the Pope's speech, edits set to lo-fi and inspirational music, commentary from young Catholic influencers, agnostics, and even ex-Catholics who said, "For once, I felt like the Church was talking to me." One viral video with over 6 million views showed a young woman listening to Pope Leo's words. "If your heart is cracked, then let God pour His light through the cracks." She began to cry. Her caption read, "I haven't prayed in years. This man just reminded me why I used to." For a generation often accused of spiritual apathy, this moment proved the opposite. They're not uninterested. They're just waiting to be spoken to in a way they can feel. Across the globe, thousands began to share personal stories connected to the catechesis. From war zones to inner cities, from nursing homes to college campuses, people posted how the Pope's words reminded them to forgive a parent, how they left confession for the first time in years after watching the catechesis, how they felt seen and spoken to by the Church. In Kenya, a young seminarian named Peter wrote, "For the first time, I understood a papal catechesis without waiting for translation. But more importantly, I felt it. And I cried." In Texas, a Catholic school teacher said, "We played the Pope's catechesis in class. Even the rowdy students were quiet. One of them whispered, 'He sounds like he actually gets it.'" Some might wonder, did Pope Leo oversimplify? Far from it. While the language was plain, the theology was profound. Here are 3 key doctrinal ideas embedded within his catechesis. Mercy as participation in divine nature. The Pope said, "Mercy is not optional for a Christian. It is participation in the heart of God." This connects directly to 2 Peter 1 verse 4, which says we are partakers in the divine nature. Human brokenness as sacred entry point. "Your scars are not a curse," he said. "They are the cracks through which grace can enter." Echoing St. Paul's letters, particularly 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. "My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness." Mercy as evangelization. "The world does not need more judgment," Pope Leo declared. "It needs more witnesses of healing." Here, he aligns with Pope Francis's theology but uses a direct English voice that gives younger generations a new gateway to understand the gospel. According to a Vatican insider, the decision for Pope Leo to deliver the entire catechesis in English was not last minute. The Pope had been practicing for weeks. While fluent in several languages, he knew that English would not only be heard, but felt globally. He reportedly told his advisors, "I don't want to just translate the catechesis. I want to transmit the mercy." This effort included special pronunciation coaching, rehearsals with native speakers, and careful editing to retain the theological beauty of Catholic tradition while making it understandable to a global audience. But not all were overjoyed. Some traditionalist groups expressed concern that delivering catechesis entirely in English might set a precedent that distances the Church from its Latin roots. One statement from a conservative outlet read, "While pastoral accessibility is good, the risk of diluting doctrinal precision must be monitored." However, most critics acknowledge that the Pope's English message did not abandon orthodoxy. Instead, it clarified it in the plainest of terms. One commentator even said, "If St. Paul were alive today, he would have live-streamed his letters on YouTube in every language he could." Pope Leo XIV's decision isn't just pastoral, it's strategic. In a world flooded with short attention spans, algorithmic content, and shallow sound bites, he chose depth and simplicity. "God is not far," he said. "He is whispering in the language you understand." This resonates with the digital age, where storytelling, relatability, and plain language win hearts more than complex theology ever could alone. He didn't compromise theology. He translated it, not just into English, but into humanity. The Vatican's media office didn't stop at the live broadcast. They released a YouTube short with subtitles and cinematic cuts, a TikTok-friendly clip under 1 minute, full audio recordings on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, infographics with key quotes for Instagram, a special podcast breakdown featuring young theologians from around the world. Pope Leo's catechesis didn't just go viral, it went everywhere. And this matters, because it shows a church that is learning to speak in the language of the platforms, not just the pulpit. Could this English catechesis be the beginning of a new trend? Sources inside the Vatican suggest Pope Leo plans to deliver future catecheses in various global languages, possibly rotating them based on geographic events or liturgical seasons. The goal? Global accessibility. One insider said, "The Church is no longer confined to cathedrals. It is now also on screens, headphones, and hashtags." As the catechesis ended, The Pope looked across the crowd and spoke these final words in English. Carry mercy like a candle. Let it burn quietly. Let it light your home. Let it guide you to those still in the dark. There was a moment of silence. Then thunderous applause. And in that sacred hush, the digital and physical world stood still, united by words not written on tablets of stone, but on screens, hearts, and souls. Coming up next in our final chapter, we explore what happens after the moment, how dioceses around the world are responding, how this catechesis will shape seminary formation, and how everyday people are choosing to walk with mercy. Don't go anywhere. In our journey through Pope Leo XIV's groundbreaking English catechesis, we've witnessed a spiritual ripple effect, from the Vatican to the very edges of the digital world. Now in this final part, we explore how church leaders, parishes, educators, and everyday believers are responding in action, and how this one moment may shape the Church for years to come. Within a week of the catechesis, churches across the world began using it as a foundational teaching tool. In Los Angeles, the Pope's message was printed and handed out after Mass. In India, it was translated into 6 regional dialects and read aloud in youth groups. In South Africa, it became the basis of a new Mercy Week, a series of confession, reconciliation, and community outreach events. One parish priest said, "For those who've stopped listening to sermons, the Pope's English catechesis brought them back." The response wasn't uniform in style, but unified in spirit. From high-tech parishes in the West to rural churches with handwritten bulletins, the echo of Leo's words was felt in pews everywhere. It wasn't just parishes taking note. Seminaries around the world began re-evaluating how future priests are taught to catechize. For decades, training has emphasized precision in theology, but Pope Leo's speech highlighted a different virtue: clarity. In Colombia, a theology professor said, "We are teaching our seminarians to speak about God. Pope Leo is teaching them to speak from God's heart." Training modules are now incorporating language simplicity without sacrificing depth, emotional intelligence in public preaching, use of storytelling and real-life scenarios, multilingual catechesis strategies. Some seminaries have gone as far as introducing digital literacy as part of homiletics, teaching priests how to use podcasts, reels, and live streams as tools of evangelization. Perhaps the most inspiring response came from everyday Catholics, the silent pillars of the Church. In Chicago, a retired teacher began a weekly Zoom call titled Mercy Mondays, where she and a group of neighbors reflect on a different quote from the catechesis. In the Philippines, a street vendor hung a sign on her food cart that read, "Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is God's strength through me." And in Brazil, a youth soccer league started a new motto: "We play hard. We forgive harder." It was as if a spiritual revival had begun, not in cathedrals, but in conversations. In car rides. In classrooms. In coffee shops. Unsurprisingly, the Pope's catechesis drew attention not only from within the Catholic Church, but from other faith leaders as well. An Anglican bishop in the UK wrote in an op-ed, "It is no small thing for the Pope to speak in English. It is a massive thing for him to speak with such tenderness." A prominent imam in Egypt responded, "This message of mercy is one we share. May people of all faiths carry light through the cracks of a broken world." Jewish rabbis, Protestant pastors, and even secular thought leaders reposted key lines, especially, "Let mercy be louder than our opinions." Narrator. It was a reminder that in a world polarized by beliefs, a well-spoken truth can still unite. Mainstream media didn't ignore the moment either. Major headlines read, BBC, "Pope's English homily marks new chapter for Vatican outreach." New York Times, "Plain-spoken Pope reaches the masses literally." Al Jazeera, "Pope's catechesis on mercy resonates in English-speaking Muslim nations." EWTN, "Catechesis that broke the internet and melted hearts." Across social media platforms, viewership stats were staggering. YouTube, 48 million plus views across official and unofficial uploads. TikTok, over 150 million impressions under hashtag Pope Leo English. Instagram, tens of thousands of reels using his quotes as overlays. Spotify, Pope Leo's Catechesis episode ranked top 10 in religion and spirituality worldwide. The Second Vatican Council once called for a new evangelization, a way to preach the gospel anew in a world grown cold. Pope Leo XIV's Catechesis is perhaps one of the clearest modern fulfillments of that vision. He spoke plainly, but deeply. He taught truth, but gently. He remained rooted in tradition while walking beside the contemporary heart. For many, this wasn't just a teaching, it was a homecoming. The Vatican has confirmed that Pope Leo XIV plans to deliver more catecheses in English, and potentially other languages, depending on the feast days, liturgical needs, or global crises. His team is also preparing a special edition catechesis series tailored to youth and students, the marginalized and imprisoned, those struggling with faith and doubt. These editions will be translated, subtitled, and made available in digital and print formats, ensuring maximum reach. One Vatican official summarized the vision. "This is not a moment. This is a movement. Let's reflect." From that singular moment in St. Peter's Square, we learned that language is not a barrier when love leads. That theology does not need to be complicated to be profound. That the Church is not dying, it is adapting. It is listening. It is speaking. And above all, we learn that when a shepherd speaks the language of his sheep, they hear him, they follow him, and they trust again. We close with the final words of Pope Leo XIV's English Catechesis, the words that echo not just in the square, but in the soul. Do not be afraid of your weakness. Do not fear your questions. God walks slowly, but He always arrives. And when He comes, He carries mercy, just for you. Whether you're watching from a chapel or a couch, whether you're full of faith or barely holding on, let these words reach you. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. And mercy is coming your way, in a language you understand.